October the 25th, 2020. As you're looking at national satellite images, in the blue clouds, those are the higher level clouds, and most of those have moisture in them. You can see in the southeast, we're watching this tropical storm Zeta now approach us. We're still cloudy, light sprinkling, but we're not getting the moisture we had yesterday. We're hoping it's going to dry out some. It's right now 57 degrees, which is what it was most of the day yesterday. It's supposed to warm up a little bit. You can see the clouds are thinner here, guys, but across the nation, it's about to get cold. And you've got freeze warnings from Oklahoma into Texas, Arizona, and north of there. But what we're dealing with now is possibly a change in this pattern in the Gulf of Mexico. Yesterday, in the last video, everything was blowing from the north to the south, or to the bottom in this image. And we're starting to see that change somewhat. And that's going to have something to do with Tropical Storm, which is predicted to become a hurricane, and stronger than it was in the video before. But guys, we'll just quickly, while we're looking at the nation, let's look at the National Weather Service. Now, here's our map. In the Gulf, of course, you've got hurricane warnings now, guys, all the way up into the central Gulf of Mexico. Tropical storm warnings to the right of that. Special weather statements, and you're going to have gale warnings starting to pop up all along the Gulf Coast. We've talked about this before, and I've said, I hope you are storing extra heating fuel or firewood or preparing for whatever you need to do for this year, because all of the records and all of the meteorologists that watched long-term predictions, including Farmers Almanac, even Weather Channel, AccuWeather, people like that are saying this is going to be an unusually cold winter. And this is nothing you want to play with. In the purple areas, you've got winter weather advisories that move across most of the central U.S. You can see from Colorado eastward. Also, you've got in that section, you've got winter storm warnings. Most of this is the higher elevations, and you guys know where you're at on that. You've got red flag warnings that are telling you not to burn. But you can just go through this list, pause it and look at it. Frost advisories. So everything is setting up in this front. It's going to be kind of a clash of the titans coming up into the week, because here we've got all of this cold air. And you saw all the clouds that was associated moving in this direction. Then we have much warmer, moister air coming in this direction. So two things are going to happen. This storm will have an effect on where, at this time, or at the time we're looking at Hurricane Zeta, it will have an effect on where it goes, the steering mechanism. Another thing that I'm concerned about, now no one's mentioned it a lot, but across this area, and we'll look at where the storm is going to track, and it's pretty much looks like coming up through Louisiana into Mississippi. We know that can change. But the severe weather, the tornadoes, and the high winds, because of this clash of extremely cold air and extremely moist, warm air. October 25th is not a time that we usually talk about hurricanes. I mean, it happens, but it's usually like in the warmer parts of the month or something like that, not just this, again, clash of two dynamic forces, extremely dynamic. So the thunderstorms, tornado paths involved with this could be devastating. We're not sure yet. We're still a few days out. But guys, any time that you have these opposing wind patterns come in, especially different temperatures, things can get rough very quickly. Now, we hope that the colder air will suppress some of the storms. But guys, when they're coming in such opposite energies, in other words, very cold, drier air, and then very warm, moist air, there's going to be problems. So you pay attention to this storm and watch where these fronts meet. I'm not sure where that's going to happen yet. The storm, Tropical Storm Zeta, is still moving very slowly. Now, one of the things that's going to make this storm hard to predict, although the models are there, but we're seeing a lot of conflicting weather, is that Zeta is stationary. You don't see that very often in the Caribbean, and this is a kind of an out front push from both sides of these wind patterns, the cold and the hot. So a stationary movement. It's at 40 miles an hour sustained wind speed, and the minimal central pressure is 1,000 millibars. Now, taking a look at this, 20-something minutes ago, the update, you had the storm setting here. By 8 p.m. Monday, coming ashore on the Yucatan by 8 a.m. Tuesday morning, forming a hurricane off the Yucatan Peninsula as it moves north and into the Gulf. The difference in this model and the one from the video last night was it was going to become a hurricane in the central Gulf, and by the time it got into this area, the cooler air moving from the north would have slowed the storm down, and it had an S on it at that moment. Then as it moves up through, again, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and we've seen this time and time again this year, this was going to be the danger area of tornadoes. And guys, if whatever state you are in this area, you can go to AccuWeather and look at the 3 or 4 day forecast. Again, Wednesday morning, it's going to be setting offshore of Louisiana, more than likely, as a hurricane. But we're going to be having, again, that conflict of air. So say you're in central Alabama, Tennessee. What is AccuWeather telling you the temperature would be as this storm comes through? In other words, your normal temperature is going to be cooler, but we know because of the front. But this is a very unusual situation. I'm hoping that it diffuses itself, but it could be very dangerous. So just kind of get a heads up on your local weather, and we will update it and kind of try to put some information together about the inland dangers of these two storms. Again, winter storm, hurricane. Now this, again, has been out about 27 minutes, this latest update. The spaghetti models are coming closer together, especially the Navy and the Canadian model. The Navy model is the purple line you see here, and 2 lines west is the Canadian model. And they are drifting slightly back towards Florida from west to east from last night. But these models are coming together, and when that happens, guys, you're in the crosshairs almost every time. But even though they may change, when they get close, we are seeing we're getting a very good idea of where the storm is going to track. Now notice these curves here on the bottom, and that's where the storm is at now. And actually, the model right here, called the TABD model, is the most accurate because we did see a dip south, and we're going to look at the satellite images of the Caribbean and the Gulf itself. But this dip south has occurred, and I noticed it on the early morning satellite images. Let's take a look at that. Now you can see the storm sitting there, basically stationary, and I think this curve, or that dip to the south, is starting to change, and that is why the storm is at 0 miles an hour forward speed, because it's getting ready to turn back and move northwest. It's hard to tell under these clouds the strength of the center, but there are indicators. In the blue, again, your higher tops where most of your moisture is, but notice the surface level, these white clouds here that are being pulled into this system. Very powerful. It's wrapping itself up, so when it gets through and busts through the gap or between Cuba and the Yucatan, then it's going to be on, because even though we got the cooler weather, now, as the Gulf water has maintained a lot of energy, and one of the reasons is because of grand solar minimum, our shields are very weak, and so we've talked about it for years. Your sunburns are more intense, your crop damage is more intense, and this year, this winter, the blanket is off, and this could remain the weather pattern for the next few winters, guys. So what is happening, we're entering into solar cycle 25. The sun has changed its magnetic polarities. It's indicated by the polarity of the sunspots. It happens every 11.8 years. And we're going to be rising back up into solar cycle 25, but its peak is supposed to be lower than the solar cycle that we just came out of, 24. That means grand solar minimum. You're still going to have the 11.8 year cycles, but the peaks are going to be lower. And so the weather is going to be something different than we've normally seen. And so just prepare for that. Again, this year, I'm getting extra firewood up, because no matter what happens, that wood can give you heat, light, and the ability to cook. So if you're propane or whatever, make sure you have extra, because the winter's already setting in. And when you have a hurricane this time of the year, and you have infrastructure damage, it's not just the ability to cool off with your air conditioners, but it's the ability to stay warm with other energy types. Now, if your gas lines are not disrupted or anything like that, you're pretty good to go there. But your central heat, things like that, guys, when you got very cold weather, be prepared for that. Think about it. We don't usually have to talk about cold weather and hurricane damage in the same video. But guys, pay attention to it. We're going to update it. This is a heads up. Be safe.